Guys, deluded goon or deluded, whatever you want to refer to me as. I do prefer deluded, to be fair. In fact, I don't mind either one, just as long as you're watching the thing, innit? Now, before I got crack on, if you see me look to the left, Switzerland, well, right, my right, well, on the video, looks left, my right. I'm making a hash of this. If you see me look over there, Switzerland versus Sweden's on right now, innit? But it's one of them ones where I've had some inspiration for a vid and I can't let it, like, I can't sit down and them things that I need to make it, innit? So, boom, what was I going to say now? Typically, when we speak about young players or development in particular, a lot of times we see these young talented players, they go to the top 6 or the bigger clubs than that, and you never hear from them. We've seen off the top of my head Sergio Canales when he went Real Madrid. There's bare examples I'm sure you guys can insert. Patrick Roberts to a degree. I mean, his development's come a long way, so I wouldn't be naive and say he should have stayed at Fulham because they've been in the Championship and just been promoted. And in that time, he's, played 2 years, 18 months for Celtic in the Champions League and everything. So he has developed, but the pathway hasn't been there. So we typically hear, go to a smaller club, learn your craft, and then move it from X, Y, Z. But more, and I agree with that. There's nothing wrong with that statement. Like you need to, whether you, how do I put this? Players need to take their development into consideration, especially when you consider smaller club, less money, all these things, clearer pathway. Bigger club, the pathway might be there, but it's just competition. I mean, you've seen it. Gnabry's left, there's Jeffrey Adelaide, and there's Nelson and Amici and all these talents. So you get it. Chelsea, they obviously Panzo's leaving. He's very good and he has a big future for me. But they've got a lot of talents and prospects and all of them, and all of them things there, innit? So it's not a thing. So you really need to consider a lot of things at clubs, and there's a lot to consider. I mean, I'll highlight this, but I'm just to give a little backdrop. Jay Beckford, he signed for Arsenal at 15 years of age or so from Leyton Orient. He's now been released and has joined the Polish side in their division. Hodart joined from Arsenal from Charlton. He was someone that was highly rated on the bench in the Champions League and them things there. Since been released by the club. Do you remember Dawkins, Tyrone Dawkins, someone that joined us from Luton Town at 16 in 2012? By 2015, he was released, and last time I saw, I think he was playing for Hendon FC or something. I could be wrong. Hopefully, he gets back on the surface. Cole De Silva, we know, was at Luton along with his other brothers. Jay De Silva, Cole De Silva's been released from Luton, from Chelsea now, but the three brothers in it went there, so you can see it. There's two sides to the argument. Firstly, because I see it at ground level, like I've got a friend who scouted for League 2 clubs, so I've got to see a lot of academies and them things. The lower academies, yeah, you can say the pathway's there, but it's not always as black and white. More time, there's a certain club that's been relegated from League 2. They're just they have an academy side and they have no intention of giving their first team giving chances or progression. They're looking at it for money. They're selling 12-year-olds onto Arsenal, Chelsea and all these sides for up to 20k plus. Now you might not think that's a lot. In the grand scheme of football, it's not a lot. It's not a lot. I mean, Arsenal, Chelsea, what's 20k for a long 12 to 15-year-old? And if they make it, great, you save some money or you make them profit. If they don't, it's 20,000 down the drain, innit? But to clubs in League 2 and them things, that makes the difference. So I'm seeing it. And a lot of the time, these clubs in lower divisions, they're not organised properly. Like, they're not organised properly. It's all a shambles. So how can you develop as a young kid or a young player? On top of all of that, if you're playing for the Lutons, the Barnets, etc., more time you're playing each other in it. So especially, I'd say past 16, you play better opponents. But I'd say up until from early school years up until under 14s, 15s, you're playing against similar ages. Stevenage, Luton, all these sides. No disrespect to anyone, but for a talented player that should be playing at a Premier League club and stuff like that, they're going to stagnate. I mean, if you're a young attacking player and you're badding up this league with these opponents and you're scoring 6, 7 goals, dominating it, faster than everybody, stronger than everyone, you're not going to develop. You're not going to develop. And on top of that, the training that these coaches might not be able to propel you. So you don't have the environment to excel. Where if you join a bigger club, yeah, the pathway might not be there, but you're going to have to up your game, because being talented and stuff is the minimum. It's what's got you signed. But there's numerous players. You have better access to coaching, you have better opportunities, and it makes you a better player. And another side of it is, look at Cole De Silva. He left Luton. Yeah, you could have said he could have stayed at Luton and got first team chances and all of these things. But he's gone to Chelsea, he's developed, he's got a winning mentality, he's probably developed greatly technically, and now he's got the clout of Chelsea on his CV. No disrespect to Luton and all of these sides, because there's players that have been released that are equally as good. But a lot of the game is a stitch up. I mean, if you think about, if you're a prospective manager in the lower league clubs or an agent, and someone filters interest to you and says, "Oh, we've got this midfielder, he's technically good, he's technically this and that. Some people don't care for that, but if you say he was previously at Liverpool, Arsenal, Barcelona, all these clubs, you get signed, innit? A lot of these smaller clubs are bad-minded. They're signing players with no real opportunity of making first team, with no intention of developing them to get into the first team and things like that. So yeah, like you really run a risk, man. Like, it's all too sometimes these smaller clubs are all too happy to sell people because they recognise that it's a business cycle and there's nothing wrong with it. So I know Leyton Orient's academy's got fixed up now, but at the time it was a bit of a shambles. So I can't blame Jay Beckford for leaving and joining Arsenal, because the training he got, all of these things, he might not have got too much game time, but he's improved. Hoddart's probably improved. In fact, Charlton's an exception to the rule, because I think he would have got first team chances. Charlton's got a very good academy. But even look at Cole De Silva. From joining Chelsea, I don't want to be naive and say he wouldn't get seen, but there is a big club bias, especially for scouting young players for countries. Cole De Silva went with Wales to the Toulon tournament and them things there. If he stayed at Luton, would he have got the same? Jay De Silva, his brother, a left-back that's been on loan at Charlton, I believe is going to be a bad boy left-back and is going to have a future at some club if it's not Chelsea. Yeah, you could say if he stayed at Luton, eventually he would have been seen and bought and things like that. He would have been bought and things like that, and would have had to improve and would have and them things. But would he necessarily have come developed as much as he has, being under the terrific coaches at Chelsea that have shown for years? Would he necessarily be the player he is now? Would he? There's some improvements he's probably made that I or you will never know. Tactically, technically, all of these things that you're gonna get. I'm not saying it's always you join a bigger club, there's better coaching and stuff like that. But you get where I'm coming from, like. And it also makes you better as well, because Jay De Silva must have known, alright, cool. When you're at them smaller clubs, you know you're sick in it. Look at Dragomir in his homeland. He even admitted at times I wouldn't train as hard because I knew where I was, I knew I was going to play. Come to Arsenal, we need to fix up. Look at, if Jay De Silva was still at Luton, I don't think he's like that, but you have to consider he knows he's going to play and all of these things. Imagine it logically. We're human, so we all feel guilty of that. Imagine you know you're going to play. You subconsciously, whether you want to or not, you're not going to try as hard. Where he's playing at Chelsea, yes, he's still one of the standout candidates and quality is quality, but he knows at any given moment Chelsea could find someone from France or Brazil that's equally as good as me or better than me, so he needs to up it on top of everything. So there's no rights and wrongs. I just feel it's at times, me myself, it is lazy when we say join a smaller club. Because if you were to necessarily sign for the Stevenage, the Barnets, the Leyton Orients and all of these things, yeah, you might get, looking at they're a smaller club, they have to use their resources better. You might get more of a chance, but you never know. And there's another side. We see sometimes these smaller academies get closed down. So there's no rights and wrongs, man. You never know a club's intentions. I don't want to get myself in no trouble with certain clubs, but there's a certain club that's been relegated from League Two that does this. That sadly has all of these scholars and all of these things and knows they're not going to make it. They have no intention of allowing them to make it. Under nines, nobody's going to make it. Players are just literally going to be sold on when they get interest from bigger clubs and sold for 10, 20,000 and all of this. And again, I can't blame them because it's football, innit? It's the cycle that we're living in at the moment in time. But it's not always a case of joining a bigger club and then a smaller. It's not always a case of staying at a smaller club and just blowing. To be fair, yes, you can say Cole De Silva, Dawkins, Jay Beckford, Hodder, all of these players that I've listed should have stayed at other clubs, stayed at their club and whatever. And you could say that's right. There's no rights or wrongs, but I guarantee they've all developed and things like that greatly, and they've all got clout now, isn't it? Like. For me, especially Hodder, I don't think he won't have a club for long, in my opinion. I believe he's going to be a decent keeper at some level. And if it wasn't for injuries and things like that, he might have lapped Matt Macey for his chance. Another one, ironically, Matt Macey was signed from Bristol Rovers, like League Two. You get what I'm saying? Like, he could have stayed there, got his clout, and he hasn't really had much of a chance at Arsenal. Ironically, he's been at Charlotte and he's been on loan at Luton. But you get the point. Joining a small club that just doesn't necessarily mean more chances. Joining a bigger club doesn't necessarily mean more chances. And especially when you're younger. Yeah, you could say, alright, he's 7 years of age, joined Barnet, play football and all of these things. That might be good for him. But if I had the choice between Arsenal and Barnet for my kid, I'm actually going to prick Arsenal. Yeah, you can say he runs the risk of getting released and all of these things, but the technical ability, the training, the detail, all of these things are going to make him a better player. So if he went from under 17s to under 16s and he got released, he can join these smaller clubs. And sometimes at these smaller clubs, there's men that are there from 9 to 16 that are great centre-halves, because I've seen it. I know someone that's been at a club from under 9 to under 16 as a centre-half, one of the star centre-halves. Boom. Someone's been released from Arsenal. Centre-half's been released from Arsenal. They now sign him. Scrap heap, you go. A left winger's been signed from Spurs. Scrap heap, you go. Do you get what I'm saying? There's nothing more to be said on that front. And I'm boiling people, man. I feel like a chicken in the oven, boy. Shit. Guys, Deluded. Get in the comments, subscribe, and do the rest. One love for watching.